Good afternoon, and welcome to another Research in Action brought to you by the Division of Research at Florida Atlantic University. My name is Karen Scapinato. I will be today's moderator. It is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Peter Cruz, who is the Executive Director of the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy and an affiliate associate professor at Florida Atlantic University. Both his academic and professional careers have been focused on improving the ethical climate in public sector programs and organizations. He graduated with his PhD in public administration from FAU, so is an alum, and has taught ethics and organizational behavior in both undergraduate and graduate students in a variety of different universities, I must say. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cruz, who will tell us about government corruption.
Thank you very much, Karen. Well, good afternoon, everyone. When Karen first asked about coming on this Research in Action webinar and talking about government corruption, I was thinking when you all were looking at the splash page when you first logged in here, most people think of like Washington, D.C. There was a picture of the White House. And of course, corruption can happen anywhere in both the public and the private sectors. But our particular research at FAU and the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy focuses on the public sector. The public sector, of course, uses other people's money, yours and mine, as our tax dollars. And that makes any corruption there or any misuse of public money perhaps a more severe threat than if it were a private corporation. Although corruption is everywhere in both the public and private sectors, but today we'll focus mostly on the public sector. And I'd like to bring it down to let me see here we go. I'd like to bring it down to our local area. It's easier to think globally, but act locally. And we've had some very interesting experiences with corruption here in Southeast Florida. And I can speak most directly about Palm Beach County. One of the honors I have, in addition to teaching at FAU and running the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy, is that I'm also the chair of the Palm Beach County Ethics Commission and chair of the Inspector General Review Committee. And I'll explain what those two organizations do, but they're part of our ethics infrastructure that's been in existence a little over 10 years in Palm Beach County. A lot of people don't know those two organizations. When I tell people I'm an ethics commissioner, I sort of have to explain what our local ethics commission does. And one of the question here at the top of the screen, which is part of the advertisement for today's webinar, is there a growing crisis of declining ethics in the public sector? I think the faith in the public sector has been damaged in the minds of the American public for some time now. And there are a lot of reasons. Of course, corruption is one of them. Some of our political divisions are another reason. But we can actually go back and find that corruption in government goes very far back in history. And I'll try to focus on that in just a minute or two here. We have in Palm Beach County what we call the Palm Beach County Ethics Partnership. And I'll explain what that is in just a minute. And we've sort of gone out on the road talking about this is probably one of the best practices that the public sector can adopt, not only here in the county, but in other counties and cities and other states. And I presented material like this to a variety of audiences around the country. And it's an interesting thing. And it's really right here in our own backyard. The Palm Beach County Ethics Partnership consists of two organizations I just mentioned, the Inspector General and the Commission on Ethics. Also part of that is the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy at FAU. The fourth member is a group called the Ethics Coalition of Palm Beach County, which basically is the organization that started all of the other three organizations. And there's some interesting history here in Palm Beach County about how the Ethics Coalition sort of gave birth to the other three organizations. When we talk about declining confidence in the public sector, I sort of like to draw two contrasts of people you've probably heard of before. Rex Tillerson, who was the former Secretary of State under President Donald Trump, and Merritt Stearheim, a well-known public administrator here in Southeast Florida for over 60 years. Rex Tillerson, after he left office, made a speech for the first time when he was no longer Secretary of State, saying that there is a growing crisis of integrity and ethics in government. Of course, he was talking about the federal government and his experience in the Trump administration. On the other side, Merritt Stearheim, who is a member of the advisory board for the Public Ethics Academy here at FAU, is about ready to produce his first book, The Importance of Ethical Leadership and Moral Courage in Public Management. And he uses his 60-year career, and for those of you that have grown up here in South Florida, know he is considered Mr. Good Government, being Miami-Dade County Manager, the Superintendent of Miami-Dade Public Schools in the past, and has had a stellar career in the public sector. And his life is sort of an exemplar of what it means to be an honest public servant. And later on, we'll be publishing his book through FAU and the Public Ethics Academy, and you'll be able to download an online copy of it if you'd like. From Washington to Harvard, the ethics director of the federal government's ethics director said during the Trump administration, Walter Schaub, that he had to leave the federal government ethics office because no one was paying any attention to ethics in the administration at the time. I think you probably all remember that. And he claimed there was the president was causing the crisis, but there were other things going on there too, in my opinion. But he calls for reform. So we actually did have a federal ethics office at the executive branch. But let's go all the way over to college admissions. And I work at a college, and just about 2 years ago, Operation Varsity Blues, which was an FBI sting operation at prominent universities in the United States, where parents were basically buying admission for their children through the back door. And colleges were caught, some individuals were caught taking money for those admissions. And it happened at Harvard, it happened at UC System, University of California. So even in our college campuses, trying to get our kids into college, we have ethical problems. If we look on the national level, and we're fairly new into the Biden administration, so we can't really draw any great conclusions yet, but trying to reform ethics at the national level, there's basically nothing has been going on. Hopefully that will change soon. At the state and local level, there have been none and some, and state being the state of Florida, I'll use that. Nothing much has been going on there. But here locally, a lot has been going on over the last few years, and I want to focus in on that. And as we go forward, we have what we call two organizations that are compliance organizations. They're in the business, the Commission on Ethics and the Inspector General, of enforcing the ordinances that the voters have passed here, the Palm Beach County Ethics Ordinance and the Inspector General Ordinance. Those organizations are policing organizations, for want of a better word, to make sure that people covered by those ordinances and the organizations covered by those ordinances comply with the law. And we're one of the few few counties in the state of Florida that has both an independent commission on ethics and an independent inspector general. But we just don't want to be ethics cops. We really want to go beyond that as a county, as a state, even as a nation. We want to move into ethical culture development. And the two organizations that are involved in that are the Ethics Coalition and the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy. So, and the four of those organizations, again, are the Palm Beach County Ethics Partnership. Well, when I study ethics, we find there's some common misconceptions of are people less ethical now? We really find when we do research that that's a myth. You know, scandals go back to the Old Testament. In the Quran, the Talmud, the Old and New Testament, there are examples of corruption and bad behavior in both what passed for government in those days and in the private sector. And former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan probably put it best a few years ago by saying it's not that humans have become any more greedy than the past, it's just that there are so many more avenues to express the greed than there were in the past. So there's social media, there's the internet, there's so many more ways to do probably the same amount of corruption that we've had for a long time. Some of you are old enough to remember the comic strip Pogo, and where the author said, "We have met the enemy and he is us." And we're sort of the ones that are responsible for the corruption, we being our society. And from the New York Times, a Thomas Nast cartoon from 1871 of the Tammany Hall scandals and Boss Tweed. So those were considered terrible scandals in their day. And that was in the 19th century. But what do we find when we ask the questions, what happens when leaders lose their way? Well, we can look at corruption on both the individual and the organization level. Some famous cases of corruption, just two examples here: former President Richard Nixon, Bernie Madoff, and then corporations such as Wells Fargo, Volkswagen, and even Facebook have had their problems. So we look at corruption on both levels, what do individuals do and what do organizations do. And actually, our Commission on Ethics looks at individuals. Our Inspector General looks at organizations and process. So it's interesting. So researchers, we look at two different ways we look at ethics, and our compliance organizations, our ethics police here in Palm Beach County, look at ethics in the same way. Well, here we are in beautiful South Florida, beautiful Palm Beach County, or wherever if you're in South Florida, Miami-Dade and Broward. We have some of the most scenic scenes in the world, beautiful beaches, beautiful weather. But our paradise in the mid to late 2000s, had some problems. We had, those of you who might remember this, we had arrests and prosecutions of high-level county and city officials. 3 of our county commissioners and 2 West Palm Beach city commissioners pled guilty to federal corruption charges. And 1 other county commissioner was convicted of a state felony offense. So 4 of 7 on the county level and 2 of 5 on the city level. And in 2009, we had the distinction of being called Palm Beach, the new capital of Florida corruption. That's sort of a snapshot of the cover. This, of course, went around the world. I was actually living and teaching in California at the time. I remember saying, what the heck is going on in Palm Beach County? Well, what was going on was that a group of citizens who were so upset with what was happening in the county and the notoriety that we were receiving, started what we call the Palm Beach County Ethics Movement. And it started around 2007 when a group of citizens band together to demand government accountability. That was originally called the Ethics Initiative. It's now called the Ethics Coalition, which is that fourth member of the Ethics Partnership that I mentioned. In 2009, our state attorney at the time convened a grand jury to look into the allegations of corruption here in the county. We also had investigations going on from the Department of Justice and the federal level. They were here too. But at that time, a very wise and public official who was very concerned about government, his name is Norman Ostrow, a former a former Broward County state legislator, was on the Florida Commission on Ethics, came to FAU and said, we need to take part in this ethics reform, and we need to teach public officials and those working in the public sector how not to go to jail. We'll start at the very beginning level. And FAU formed what we called the Public Ethics Academy. And Mr. Ostrow came and started with his own money and started it really out of a desk drawer and in an office in one of our faculty offices. In 2009, what was also happening is the County Code of Ethics, Palm Beach County Code of Ethics was developed, a Commission on Ethics was proposed, and the Office of Inspector General was created. So we can see all these things between 2007 and 2009 here in Palm Beach County were coming together. But I just want to emphasize again, this was a citizen-led movement from the ground up. It did not come from the government down. The government failed our citizenry. There was no county mechanism to control the kind of corruption that was going on. We had a state ethics commission at the time, but it was not taking any action. So the people banded together and put an initiative on the ballot that ended up with the voters approved with over 75% approval rate to set up both the Commission on Ethics and the Inspector General. Okay, let me go here. All right, since the formation of both our Ethics Commission and our Inspector General, one of the measures of success would be, are we more ethical now or less ethical or about the same that we were before? Well, that's sort of a hard thing to measure, but I'll give you some of the items, the issues, the ethics issues that have come up in the years since the Ethics Commission and the Inspector General were out doing their operation. In 2016, former school board member and a cyber criminal was arrested with an illegal Bitcoin operation. The reason the question marks are there, by the way, going through, is that I used to have pictures here of the actual people who were here, and some of them have actually, if they've gone to prison or paid a fine, or actually are reformed, they paid the price for violation. And I don't want to keep putting up what we call mugshots when people really have been caught, have done their time or paid their fine or done community service. And that's why I've taken out their names and taken out their faces. We had a circuit court judge and professional, whose wife was also a professional guardian, had a guardian corporation in the 15th Circuit. All kinds of scandals with that came up. We have City of Green Acres councilwoman and a treasurer at Boca Raton High School were charged with fraud. The treasurer at Bach Middle School of the Arts, the treasurer at Palm Beach Gardens High School. And you can see in the red at the bottom here, one pled guilty, one was arrested, later pled guilty, and the Palm Beach Gardens High was sent to pre-trial diversion as part of the sentence. A local judge on the 15th Circuit was accused of violating election law during her election, and the Florida Supreme Court removed her in 2018. Former cop in Delray, Riviera, and Palm Beach shores was accused of sexual harassment on all 3 jobs. There was a big settlement to pay restitution to the victims of that. And a director of the Palm Beach County Housing Authority was fired for financial misfeasance and ethics violations, and in late 2017. So is the Ethics Commission and the IG responsible for all of those? No, some of them they were. And I'm going to tell you how we interact with law enforcement in these 2 organizations. You'll see in this chart I have up now with our circles, the one on the left is what the Commission on Ethics does, and the one on the right is what the Inspector General does. We, on the Ethics Commission side, we investigate, enforce allegations related to the ethics ordinance, the lobbyist registration database, and the post-employment ordinance, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. We also provide opinions, legal opinions, on potential violations of those 3 ordinances. And we provide education and outreach on those 3 ordinances. So rather than only waiting for people to come to us to complain on the Ethics Commission side about potential violations, we actually are in the business of trying to educate and divert people from misbehaving or violating the law. So if someone covered by the ethics ordinances or the lobbyist database or the lobbyist registration or the post-employment ordinance were to write or call us at the Ethics Commission, we will, and they say, I want to do this, or I'm thinking of doing that, and we will give them a written or an oral response as to whether we believe it's okay or not okay under the ethics ordinance. If we say it's okay and we put it in writing, then that person, as long as they do exactly what we say they can do, no one can file an ethics complaint against them. They can't be indicted by the state attorney. So we call that ask before you act. And it's so much easier to prevent a violation than to go after and try to enforce the ordinance. It's most, I will tell you just in just general principles, most people do not want to violate the ethics ordinance. A lot of our complaints, if there is a violation, it was what we call an unintentional violation of something. Somebody didn't know they were doing wrong. And of course, if they'd asked us first, then they wouldn't have even been turned in. But we find very few people violate with what we call intent, that you went into some situation knowing it was wrong and you still went ahead and did it anyway. And of course, in criminal law, the analogy is that intent with a criminal offense can raise the penalties dramatically and the prison time and things like that. If you like premeditation, that's the worst of a very bad crime. The Inspector General audits government organizations to make sure efficiency and accountability are maintained. They also have a great responsibility overseeing contracts, overseeing public procurement, whether that's been done fairly, and training the covered organizations on how to issue RFPs correctly, requests for proposals, and how to select people through the bid process. But they also investigate allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse, and misconduct and mismanagement. Where the two circles intersect, that's where both the Commission on Ethics and the Inspector General, two different offices, come together. On the left, we deal with people. On the right, we deal with process and organizations. Sometimes when the IG is looking at a process, at a bid, he may identify somebody who needs to come to the Ethics Commission to be investigated. Then that name is passed over to us. Sometimes when we're investigating an individual, we find that maybe there's a process that's wrong, that we think is wrong. We will turn that over to the IG. So those two organizations together form the ethics police here in Palm Beach County. They don't always like me to call them that, but it's sort of, that's the easiest way to communicate to the public at large. One of the interesting difference between the IG and the Ethics Commission, IGs, after they do all of their audit, oversight, and investigation, they write a report that makes recommendations, and whoever they're writing the report for either can accept or reject those recommendations. But that's all the IG can do. The IG can't put you in jail, can't fine you, can't do anything other than hold you up to the public and saying this is what you're doing, it's good or bad. On the Ethics Commission side, we can do a lot more. There's more teeth on our side. We can, if we find you guilty of the violation, we can reprimand you with a letter, we can fine you, or we can turn you over to our state attorney in the 15th Circuit, it's Dave Ehrenberg, and he can take you to court through an indictment process, and that can be very serious. I mean, we don't go to court on as either the IG or the Ethics Commission, although we do have attorneys that work in both organizations. The only person that can actually take you into civil or criminal court is the state attorney, and that can lead to prison time. And so that's one of the big differences between the IG and the Commission on Ethics. We have 5 ethics commissioners here in Palm Beach County. They're appointed by 5 different organizations: the County Bar Associations, the County League of Cities, the Police Chiefs Association, the local CPA Association, Certified Public Accountant Association, and the reason I'm here sitting talking to you, the president of Florida Atlantic University, the state university here in Palm Beach County, gets to appoint one ethics commissioner. And we serve a term of 4 years, renewable for 4 years. We're commissioners, but we don't run for re-election or election. We don't get a salary. The people you see on the picture in front of you, attorneys and a college professor and a CPA, all consider this our public service. We vote and organize ourselves between a chair and a vice chair. I'm the current chair. Michael Kreidel is the vice chair. And that's how the ordinance was set up. We had the people that wrote our ordinance to get this passed a little over 10 years ago realized they needed support from powerful groups in the county to be able to get this ethics ordinance passed, to set up the structure I've just explained. So one of the ways you get people to cooperate with you is to let them into the process. So the attorneys, law enforcement, the cities, through the League of Cities, all were partners to get this passed. And their say is that they get to name a commissioner who they support and who they like. I think I mentioned that we, under the Commission on Ethics, we only cover Palm Beach County. We only cover county and municipal employees and officials, and we have some limited jurisdiction over the vendors of the county and the cities. We also have limited jurisdiction over the lobbyists, the people who employ lobbyists, and the three things that we enforce for that group I just mentioned is the Palm Beach County Code of Ethics, the Lobbyist Registration Ordinance, and the Post-Employment Ordinance, which applies really only to former county commissioners and certain former county employees. So if you're in office in Palm Beach County, you're working in the public sector in Palm Beach County, if you lobby people in Palm Beach County, public sector in Palm Beach County, and if you sell as a vendor to municipalities or the county, you're covered by these particular ordinances. We actually have a complaint process here, and I won't go through it in detail, but you see on the left-hand side, we have one of the many things we do. We find that complaints are filed which really do not meet what we call legal sufficiency. And so we dismiss the complaint. We take every complaint that we get that we can figure out that there's a name on it and there's somebody that may be covered by the ordinance. We look at everything we get. We get phone calls, we get emails, we get letters, we get things pushed under the door at night. Not that many that way, but we get them in all different forms. And due to our sunshine laws here in the state and our ordinance, we investigate everything that we can. We either dismiss it saying, I know this sounds very bad. People say this is unethical. We say, yes, it is, or it sounds like it, but all we can enforce is the law. We don't make judgments or value decisions on whether this person was good or bad to you, or it maybe in another place it would be unethical or immoral, but we're a government of laws. That's what the founders of our country set up. So all we can do is that if it's not in the ordinance, we have the term lawful but awful. That's how we have to address it. And that upsets some people, and it's unfortunate. But again, the protection is that we don't sit up there making up our minds every day about what we think is good and bad. All we can do is enforce what the voters let us enforce. If we find that there is a legally sufficient complaint, we sometimes find that there's probable cause to go to a hearing, and then we either resolve the complaint with or without a hearing. If there's a hearing, we either do it in front of the five of us, or we have a hearing officer. Most of the time we have a hearing officer, one person who's appointed to listen to both sides. And then the commissioner, the hearing officer, finds either that there's no violation or there is a violation. And if there's a violation, we will then impose whatever sanctions we agree to impose as a commission. There are five of us, at least three of us out of the five have to vote to agree on something. So just like a regular elected body, we do vote in public on the record, and that those decisions are recorded and can be viewed at any time. One of the things that when we're training here, here's, if you want to distill this, what I've just been saying, into something very short, is that we look across the first cut of any ethical decision, concern, or question. Is it legal? Does it violate either the a state, city, Commission on Ethics ordinance? Yes or no? Does it comply with the Code of Ethics in the county here? And our Ethics Commission staff usually can help you determine that. doesn't comply with a city or a county policy, you, as a public sector official or employee, you may not violate the ethics ordinance, but you could violate a county or city policy and be in trouble with them. And that's a whole other area that's not under our jurisdiction. So just because you get a pass from a commission on ethics or an IG, your city or county organization may say that you can't do that, and that's between you and that organization. And what we finally say is that technically you pass all the way to the final step, but we say this, maybe the optics don't look too great to us, but we can't stop you from doing it, but you might want to consider whether you should go ahead with this. And that decision is entirely up to the individual that comes. Sometimes things are lawful, but look terrible to the people you're working with. I think I just mentioned a minute ago, we have both finding ability on the Commission on Ethics, and we do have criminal enforcement ability too. Our motto is ask first, act later. Email, website, phone call are ways that people can contact us. In the Inspector General's office, our Inspector General is and has been for the last few years. His name is John Carey. He has a staff of attorneys, investigators, and contract compliance specialists, all working to make sure that the Inspector General ordinance is enforced. And he finds generally financial issues. He can find that that certain costs are questioned. And in this reporting period here, $48.7 million was questioned by the IG staff in these organizations. He can also identify potential cost savings. Question costs may be okay, but they look like they need further investigation. It doesn't mean that something is illegal, but it's just that you should go back and check if you could have saved money doing something. And the next level up is potential cost savings. Then we go into recommended and corrective actions. There were over 1,000 in this reporting period. And then he actually finds cases that he can refer to either law enforcement, either our ethics commission or the state commission on ethics. Allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse in organizations go to the Inspector General, and they can come to him in all the ways that I just told you. You can complain to the Commission on Ethics, email, phone call, letter, visiting their office personally, however people want to do it. And sometimes what we do is we grant whistleblower status. A lot of our complaints about fraud, waste, and abuse come from people inside organizations. And so those folks need to be protected, their names and their identities, as long as possible, so they're not retaliated against in their organizations. So, and if you're granted whistleblower protection by the IG, your identity will remain confidential during the investigation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Ethics Coalition, the last organization in our group here. It was that group of citizens formed together in the mid-2000s to set up the structure that I've just been explaining for the last 30 minutes. It still exists because they are interested in making sure that the organizations that they help set up, particularly the IG and the Commission on Ethics, are still doing what the voters wanted them to do. So that's sort of our oversight, people that oversee the Ethics Commission, people that oversee the Inspector General. It's not an incorporation, it's not a 501c3. And the people that are part of that organization include myself, Commission on Ethics, people from the IG's office, the League of Women Voters, Leadership Palm Beach County, faith-based organizations, healthcare, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Economic Council of Palm Beach County. Sort of a cross-section of our county, people that are very interested in organizations, very interested in making sure good government continues here. So they're sort of always there. We all communicate. I'm probably the common thread that goes back and forth between all three, Ethics Academy and the two other organizations. So that stitched together becomes our ethics partnership. And in the last few minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about what we now call the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy at Florida Atlantic University. Some of you may know Leroy Collins was the governor of Florida from the mid-50s to 1960. He is considered the first modern governor of Florida since Reconstruction. He laid the groundwork for Walt Disney and many of our interstate, our state highway system, and many of the early development in Florida occurred because of things that happened during his tenure as governor of the state of Florida. His family set up the Collins Center for Public Policy at Florida State University, and also set up a branch office of the Collins Center in Miami-Dade County some years ago. When the Collins Center in Miami was closing about 5 years ago, they approached us at FAU and asked if we'd like to apply for the remaining assets. And we did. We competed against FIU and a few other big organizations, and FAU won the endowment. And part of that was to rename our academy in honor of Leroy Collins, which we now call the Leroy Collins Public Ethics Academy. And we have a group of advisory board members who I'll show you in a minute. Our mission is to research ethics and provide information and training for local government agencies. We have a number of ethics experts on our faculty. That information that they do research on ethics, we try to get back into the community as quickly as we can. And we have an informational research database on ethics decisions and ethics violations in Florida and in the county that goes back many years. And we offer specialized training sessions to municipalities, not just here in Palm Beach County, but that are tailored to their specific ethical needs. For example, law enforcement versus water management versus city government. There are some different ways you would talk to each of those groups so they can connect what they do with their jobs to how to be more ethical. So I guess we would ask at the very end here, can we recover as an can organizations recover from ethics scandals? Well, in 2009, we being Palm Beach County, were on the front of Time Magazine as Corruption County. By 2011, when we had put all of these reforms and just put them in place, they were just getting going. The National Association of Counties, NACO, gave the county an award saying, you have done you've done so much dramatic improvement here, and set up a model for other counties around the state to follow. We're giving you an award. And to go from 0 to 60 in just a couple of years was amazing. And the organizations that I've been highlighting all day with you were a large part of why that happened, and why we still have a very robust ethics infrastructure here. What are we doing now? We need to move from an ethics building standpoint to what we call an ethics sustaining standpoint. We have a very strong infrastructure in place. We've just been talking about it for the last 40 minutes. We're continuing to evolve the business community as a partner for sustaining a strong ethics culture. Those of you that follow the business here in Palm Beach County, we've become a world location for Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. that our Business Development Board and our Economic Council have been very successful in bringing here. So what we try to tell those organizations, both of which are in the Ethics Coalition, is that a strong ethics infrastructure is good for our citizens and is good for business. So hopefully the tagline will be pretty quickly, good ethics is good business. And so I think I have time for a few questions here, but if any of you would like to ever contact me or any of the organizations that I've been talking about, my contact information is here on the screen. If you're at fau.edu, FAU's main website, just do /LCPEA for Levi Collins Public Ethics Academy, or just Google it and Public Ethics Academy, and you'll actually get right to it. Our email is very simple, ethics@fau.edu, and our phone number 561-297-4049. Okay, Karen.
Great, thank you very much, Peter. Very interesting. So just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please post and write them under the Q&A button in the bottom of your screen. We'll go through as many as we can in the remaining time. If we run out of time, we ask Dr. Cruz to answer them offline, and we will post the answers on our website. So you already mentioned, Peter, the whistleblower protection. One of the questions from one of our attendees here is if there are specific whistleblower laws, particularly here in the county, in Palm Beach County, that protect the whistleblowers in our county here.
Yes, and there's actually the state of Florida also, which has an ethics commission, also has whistleblower protection laws. The whistleblower protection in the public sector, and realizing we're talking public sector here, if we're talking about Walmart or Wawa gas stations, that's private sector, and that doesn't apply, what I'm about to say, to private organizations. But if your complaint is about a public organization covered by either the IG ordinance or the ethics ordinance, you can be given whistleblower protection if the nature of your complaint, that you're the only person that knows about this issue, you file the complaint, the staff will determine very quickly whether you are eligible for whistleblower protection. If you are nervous or you decide you're not going to get it, then you don't have to go any farther. It's totally up to you. I will say that some people who make complaints about ethics violations sometimes use a second party to actually go on when you sign your name as a complainant, but then usually that person who really knows about the information, our investigators come back and talk to that person. So yes, but the whistleblower protections are only available through either the IG or the Commission on Ethics. If the complaint is truly legally sufficient and it is covered by those laws, then yes, that's where it's eligible. You're eligible for that.
Great. Here's a very interesting question going back to ethics training. Can you give us a brief snapshot of the practical concerns when you conduct ethics training? What are a few examples of how to teach it, particularly to public and municipal workers who had not had formal training in ethics or its philosophy?
Right. Well, depending on the group that we talk to, whether it's frontline workers, middle or upper management in organizations, the flavor of the training changes. If we're talking to code enforcement administrators, for example, in cities, a lot of their ethics concerns are around what they have to do with their job. Who's making the complaint? What is the elected official telling them to do? What are the citizens telling them to do? Are there inducements to not turn in a report that you should turn in? Or if someone is trying to get somebody, do you write a report up that's worse than it actually is? Those are the kinds of things you have to focus on. So the law is the bedrock. The ordinance, the policy, you have to make sure that everyone understands what that is and that you don't violate that. But of course, not everything is written down. Some become judgment calls. And when I teach ethics to students at FAU, undergrad and grad students, I don't tell them how to be ethical. I tell them the different ways you can approach a decision and who's the focus on in the decision. Is it, are you protecting yourself? Are you concerned about the person you're looking at? Is it something that's expediency? Is something that you really are concerned with? And if you want to make sure the result happens predetermined, sometimes you violate process along the way. And I've had to do that. And I guess what we tell people, everyone makes mistakes every day. Some big, some not so big. The acid test, to use an accounting term, is that if you can look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, this is truly the right thing to do, or would you have any concern about anybody in a public setting saying out loud what you did, and everybody knew what the situation was? Would you have any qualms about having anybody else hear about it? If you can't look at yourself, and if you are concerned about other people finding out, my suggestion always is go back and take a look again at what you're doing, and why are you nervous about having somebody find out about it? And so that's sort of how we teach it. Some people tell me you have to learn ethics when you're with your parents or in your house growing up. Well, not everybody has the perfect house, perfect family, and some people learn the wrong things growing up. So I believe you can teach ethics. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. So anyway, I hope that answers some of the question anyway.
It's a very interesting idea to look yourself in the mirror, right? Look at yourself in the mirror, and also looking at whether what you're doing can be made public. Another question here in terms of who should be contacted if someone in the public observes what they view as unethical behavior. The question here is, should they contact the FBI first when seeing public corruption, or contact the Commission of Ethics on ethics, or both?
You can do all of the above. You can call the state attorney's office. You can call the Federal Bureau, FBI local office here. You can call the Commission on Ethics or the IG. You can call everyone. Or what we do, if you want to not make so many calls, if you call the county enforcement agencies, either the Commission on Ethics or the IG, if we see a crime, we turn it over to law enforcement right away. We don't hold back on anything. So we have turned things over. If they're, for example, if they're federal labor violations, that wage and hour violations, that's not a county or a city enforcement area. That's a federal issue. So those kinds of things have gone to the FBI in the past. We've received those from basically vendors that have been working for the county or city. That's how we would get involved. The basic rule, and not to make it as simple as possible, if you have a complaint about a person by name, call the Ethics Commission. If you think your bid for services for a certain city was improperly handled, and you want to do business with the city or municipality, and something was you feel was wrong, it was a violation, you could call the Inspector General. You can make an anonymous complaint. We do start investigations without someone signing a name. We can start our own investigations if we have suspicion that there's something going on. Same thing with the Inspector General. But it takes a lot longer if we have to dig hard. What we usually ask of people who are going to make a complaint, give us enough information to get us pointed in the right direction. Because if we just go around and sort of ask at the beginning, and you allege someone has done something wrong, one of the first things we'll do is go to that person and say, did you do this? And if they say no, and we have no other reason to suspect that they didn't, we sort of have to stop it right there. We just don't go tearing through people or organizations without any rhyme or reason. We have to have, the probable cause or enough evidence to be able to move our investigations forward. So if anybody wants to complain, don't just call up and say, Peter Cruz is corrupt, you got to go look at it. I mean, that doesn't get us anybody very far. I am covered by both ordinances too, but you need to have something more specific. And then if you want to hear what the result is, you'll have to either leave some kind of information, or you'll have to wait until we actually work that case all the way through and then check our website to see what our decision was. Everything we do is public. It's in the public. Everything the Inspector General does, same thing. So if you want to sign, we will tell you as quickly as we finish the case what we did.
Okay, we're unfortunately out of time. I know we have a number of additional questions. So Peter, we're going to ask you to answer those questions offline.
Okay.
We will post the answers on our website together with a recording of today's presentations. Also, feel free to contact Dr. Cruz with additional questions if you have them. With that, thank you very much, Peter. It was a pleasure having you today.
Sure.
Very interesting and important topic. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. See you in the next year. This was our last event for this year. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.